Apparently, the fourth bottle was never in the Fairy Fountain rupees at all. It was apparently accessible by going in the back entrance of Rabio's house when it's not possible at all to see it from the top-down perspective. So they hid the bottle from me the entire game. I started searching for Maimais at this point. I remember searching the entirety of the Dark Lake Hylia multiple times because the sound of the Maimais is too quiet for me to hear well all the time, even with the volume up all the way. Until finally I found the Maimai under a skull above me to the left of a cave. A cave that's small. The caves are so lazy in this game. They're almost all like one room with nothing in them. You can tell they were rushed out. There's also a creepy rumor guy in the woods that I can only assume has a hookshot himself so that he can get to his home too. And when I asked about the rumors about Zelda, instead of developing her character at all, I was just told that she admires the hero of legend. Well, duh. He was saying that he was going to tell me a love story, but no, that would be too interesting. He could have told me about her hobbies or something like that, but instead it's just stuff we already know. He also explains that the fortune teller of Hyrule told the witch that the person she's in love with isn't compatible with him, when that person was himself, and this is a tragic contrast to Lorule. And his secret about Sahasrahla was basically worthless. Even with the golden sword, the Cyclops still take 4 hits to kill. At least Link doesn't play a ha voice clip every time he swings his sword anymore. One of his voice clips when he lifts boulders is way stupider though. It's really annoying having 2 different messages from Irene whining about you warping so much with her, especially since they don't stop showing up the first time. I mean, at least the warp flute doesn't complain about you using it. I got all 100 Maimais without a guide, and I only had 200 rupees, after getting every chest in the overworld. Basically, this means that the game forces you to either grind rupees or take forever solving those tedious puzzle cases you want to have the money to buy and thus upgrade every item. Not that the upgrades are worth anything anyways, since they don't open up caves or whatever that only the upgrade items could get to. Compare this to Four Swords Adventures, where generally if you could upgrade an item, you're going to be able to take advantage of its upgraded form with the level design later. The solution for the treasure cave northwest of the potion shop is that when you get to the southwest area that you use the tiny platforms to reach, fuse with the wall from the top and keep going until you reach the northern platform. It's the highest part of the room. It's surprisingly simple, but it took me a while to figure that out because I guess I just instinctively assumed that the walls around the southwest and southeast areas raised higher than that and I couldn't get around them. And the only reward for me was 300 rupees. Considering how unnecessarily difficult these puzzles are, you should get a lot more than just 300 rupees as a reward for them. I don't even have enough money to buy my own boomerang. I was boiling when I beat the Hookshot Treasure Room, which is where the Watergate Palace would be but in Hyrule. There are 2 major problems with it direction-wise. First, they mislead you by showing the boomerang there instead of the bombs, which are the item that's actually mandatory for hitting the water-raising switches. This caused me to stand around for quite a while not knowing what to do because it's hard to get used to the idea that I can throw bombs to higher elevations in top-down Zelda. And second, there are 2 walls you can hookshot to, letting me get the final reward, which was a grand total of 100 rupees. The problem is that it took me a few seconds to realize that I even could hookshot to those walls because they're colored brown, not gray, meaning that they looked nothing like the hookshot walls of the Watergate Palace at first glance. It's terrible color theory, they don't draw my attention to them at all. And again, all I got from it was 100 rupees. I still don't have enough to buy a single inventory item. The thing that really is intimidating about this place at first is that there's only 2 things you can hookshot to for moving the 2 rafts, which makes it seem impossible at first. As for the sand creating treasure cave, it was pretty easy. Use the tornado rod to get sent by the wind above you to your created sand pass. The problem that stumped me at the end is that it's not intuitive that the game lets you create sand paths past regular walls. So it took me a while to figure out how to get to the chest, which only has 300 rupees. What sucks is that the treasure hunter who taunts me here and condescends me, you can't actually tell him that you beat the challenge. He only complains that he doesn't have the sand rod. You can't tell any of the treasure hunters that you got the treasures. Combine that with the meager rewards and it makes completing these treasure caves feel underwhelming and anticlimactic. It feels more like, good, I've gotten them out of the way. With how much Irene talks to me, complaining about warping me, it feels like the game is being dishonest about this Link not having an exposition fairy partner like in Link to the Past. Because she talks to me about as much as characters like the King of Red Lions did. That doesn't scream A Link to the Past to me. Link's not supposed to have a partner, he's supposed to be alone the whole game. Huh, I still haven't gotten that piece of heart that you used the hookshot in a cave in the Dark Death Mountains to get to in Link to the Past. I went to the Dark World and there's no cave entrance to get me over to that portal pillar, so I have no idea how to get that piece of heart. Another thing that was better in Link to the Past. And the treasure cave in the Hyrule equivalent to the Ice Ruins entrance is pretty easy. Just hookshot onto the hookshot walls and go on the moving platforms to get a meager 100 rupee reward. I love that the sword beam can cut grass, by the way. Oh, the Eastern Palace treasure room isn't the annoying cuckoo falling one. It's a pathetic lazy one where I just fuse with the walls and rising blocks to get on top of them to get 100 rupees at the end. This puzzle was so forgettable that I literally forgot all about it and thought some other puzzle was used in its place. I beat basically all the treasure rooms and all I could afford after that was just one item. That doesn't sound right to me. Lorule Castle's music is apparently Hyrule Castle's music backwards, so that's interesting. Makes sense. I love the way it looks on the outside, being all dark blue. But it still would have been better to have me finally go inside something like the Pyramid of Power for more than just a few caves. Though I guess the Palace of the Four Swords in the GBA version of Link to the Past was supposed to be like that. But because the walls weren't yellow like it, I never felt like it was part of the pyramid. But instead, like, I went to a portal to another dimension. So there's a ball and chain soldier that's pathetically easy because I can just spam the tornado rod to put out his flames and attack him when he's conveniently stunned from that. Pretty pathetic considering that every other ball and chain soldier in the series basically forces me to use jars or bombs to throw at him from sheer intimidation. My time is wasted twice. Once because the entire walk up to the third floor is a complete waste of time with no puzzles or difficult fights, and a second time because I have to stand on a switch to open a door and I'm forced to stand there doing nothing while the ta-da chime plays because of that. This can happen a lot, by the way. So I entered the puzzle room based around the bombs and the crystal switches that raise colored blocks, which surprisingly even has a super bomb in it. It's interesting to have the super bomb in a dungeon instead of just restricted to the overworld, but again, it's shit at following me, gets stuck on walls and stuff, so it's not fun. There's one point where I was trapped in a very small space with a statue that was constantly spitting fireballs at me, where I was forced to stand there trying to throw bombs, and thus even if I cared to stop and block with my shield, I wouldn't be able to because I was too busy focusing on throwing bombs. So obviously that was very cheap. They could have not had that statue there. The room, all about the fact that you have to remember you can now throw bombs to a higher elevation, which includes throwing them above colored blocks. At one point on the way up to a 20 rupee chest, I got hurt by my own bomb explosion when it was above me, which felt cheap for being unavoidable. Not to mention, if the explosion can reach far down enough to hurt me from above, why did I have to time placing the bomb right on the rising and falling platform in the Palace of Darkness to break the lower cracked wall then? I had to throw a bomb at the super bomb to get it to blow up and break the giant boulder arbitrarily blocking the way to it. Unfortunately, it infinitely respawns like the bomb enemies here. Since I was so focused on only using bombs, it took a few seconds for me to realize that I had to fuse with the wall to get to the super bomb. At one point I had to throw a bomb diagonally over to a crystal switch to lower blocks north of me and raise blocks west of me that would have been an inconvenience. The problem for that was that for no fucking reason, when Link's holding a bomb over his head, he walks at the speed of molasses, which never happened in any other Zelda game, so I just barely got far ahead enough to throw the bomb in time. Is this because I upgraded the bombs to make them bigger? That's a downgrade then! I brought the super bomb over to a boulder to get a key from a chest behind it. Why the fuck is the ice spitting statue here? And again, it's in a cramped space where it's going to be tedious to avoid its ice. That's cheap placement. At least the puzzle was fun, but sometimes the placement and stuff wasn't. Next up is, oh, I have to fight the boss's Tower of Hero all over again. The only good thing about this is that they changed the arena so that this time there are walls on both sides of you that close in a little bit to make things harder. But even then, that just makes it cheap. I lost count of how many times Link got annoyingly knocked on his back by this boss because I just didn't have enough space to avoid him hitting me. Link shouldn't get knocked on his back from walking into the boss himself. That doesn't make any sense. The reason he's supposed to get knocked on his back is because he's hit by the enemy with a lot of momentum. I had to stun him with the hammer as usual, but I didn't have much time to do that. So I kept getting hit uncontrollably, and the boss felt like it dragged out. The only reason this blatant padding of fighting the same boss again is remotely acceptable is because they did it in Link to the Past in Ganon's castle. Oh look, when I was brought through the portal back to the main room, I got frozen by another ice-spitting statue when I wasn't ready. That doesn't belong in this dungeon. In the next room, which also has one ice-spitting statue, it's about a puzzle where purple platforms will appear out of nowhere over lava as you walk and disappear behind you. I was tiptoeing ahead most of the time because it took a while for me to trust that I could keep walking ahead at full speed and the platform generation would keep up with me. I got hit by a fire chain that was unavoidably in my way during that time, so that was cheap. Then I led a rolling ball, like in the desert dungeon, to the south along those platforms so that it would knock a ball into lava. From this point on, I was confused. I walked ahead thinking another platform would generate to the south so that I could get to the south door, and it didn't. I then led the rolling ball into the lava. I guess I thought maybe it'd create a platform of its own for me that I could walk on. Finally, I realized I had to fuse with the purple platforms as walls to get around to the south room, which immediately locked me in with purple walls and the lava on the left side of me. It took me so long to realize that because the purple walls that spawned to let me walk on the walls over to the south don't actually show up until after I get the idea to fuse with a wall and hit to the right. I'd like to point out that this dungeon is so cheap that I'm reduced to barely 3 hearts by this point. And I've played and beaten A Link to the Past dozens of times. Predictably, the floor tiles started flying at me and the wall was there to protect me, but I still got reduced to almost 1 heart. I can't have 2 walls on either side of me at once blocking floor tiles. I could only be protected from one side. And even then, the southern part of the room will still have floor tiles flying at me from the protected side. So I stayed against the door, eventually spamming B, and at one point I still got hit doing that because this game isn't enough like A Link to the Past. Finally, that padding was over, although it at least tried to make the flying tiles puzzle different. And oh my god, this puzzle is impossible. An ice-spitting statue is dickishly placed to force me to use a fairy at one point when I'm busy moving on platforms over lava, and I fell into lava twice because the circle pads control suck, but that's not even the worst part. There's a rolling spike ball that it looks like I have to lead to the south, over platforms that will spawn over the lava. Here's the problem. The first 2 platforms are fine. They're there when I'm standing on the northernmost platform with a lava pit across from them. The problem is that now I have to start walking to the south. This creates platforms to move the spike ball along, but then it just falls in the lava because no platform gets generated to catch it, because my path is blocked by a stupid wall! I fell into lava again because the controls suck. It took forever for me to figure out that I had to fuse with the wall to go around it in a blind, frantic panic and pop out on a platform so that I could generate a platform for the ball, and then I raced south in a panic, creating more platforms for the ball in a hurry, until I inevitably fell into the lava. But not in vain, because I finally caused the spike ball to knock one of the balls into the lava. I played this game to completion a lot, like multiple times. And I still had a hard time with this puzzle. Though even getting the spike ball to the point where I had to fuse with a wall was a task all by itself, because sometimes the platforms north of there just don't want to be generated, and the ball will keep falling into lava even though I'm walking on every platform that should spawn the platforms. On the way north to the key chest, I fell down to the lower part of the room twice and had to backtrack all the way back here because I went too far to the west, and the lower elevation purple platforms barely look different than the higher elevation ones, when there's a horizontal bar to the south of that lower platform hiding the base of it from view, when the base of the higher platforms is what tells you that they're higher up. The puzzle room was frustrating despite the fun concept, and for fuck's sake, why do I have to fight the electrifying jellyfish mini-boss again? First off, it was a mini-boss, not a boss, so why is it deserving of being fought in the final dungeon in a boss rush? Second, this is a lava area. What the hell is a jellyfish doing here? Third, it being a tedious brick wall of health that forces me to use arrows against it since the sword risks me getting shocked is even worse because of the arena, consisting of platforms moving horizontally around a block wall. This means that if I attack it with my golden sword to do worthwhile damage for a change, I'm going to get knocked backwards for absolutely no reason, and that will send me to the pit below. Great level design. You know what was also a great level design? Not putting any magic meter jars anywhere in the arena, when they should have known how players would react to this boss. Because I was constantly running out of stamina meter, spamming arrows at him, and when that happened I was forced to sit there and wait for it to slowly fill all the way up on its own like I'm Silver the Hedgehog waiting to hover over to a platform. Instead, all the skulls just give me hearts. Oh no, I take that back because not all of them do. The northwest corner of the room is kind enough to give me 1 rupee and a yellow monster horn. That's totally what I needed in a boss arena. That's not tone-deaf design at all. What Zelda game does that? At this point, I was tired of the dungeon, for not exactly the only time, so I backtracked all the way through it to reach the start, only to finally notice the green portal, go in, and learn that they hid the green portal on the north side of the main room, not putting it in front of me so I could see it and use it right when I beat the boss. At least by this point I had enough money and monster tails to get at least 1 blue potion, though I was only 3 tails short of a second one, frustratingly enough. Part of the reason I had like 499 rupees leaving the dungeon was that there's red rupees littered around the dungeon for no reason, like in the purple platform area, and also in the 3rd puzzle room. And because the black armored knight that tediously always has his weapon out to block your attacks all the time actually drops 20 rupees for my trouble, even though he's not red. I took a few seconds wandering around to realize that I had to fall down from the 3rd floor to find a key and then take the green portal back, because I assumed I'd be able to go upstairs right away. Now in the 2nd main room, this is the lantern one. Oh god, the lantern sucks in this game. This isn't gonna be fun, is it? Oh, it's the glowing floors again. I lost half my hearts here from falling off the edge to my death. And I didn't even go into this with few hearts. I had full health. This just might be the worst level design in the entire goddamn game. The pit has white glowing floors on it, but those floors are surrounded by a bottomless pit and are only visible when you don't have the lantern out. Even with the lantern equipped, it turns itself on automatically, unlike Minish Cap where you could just turn them on at will, and it surrounds you with a tiny circle of darkness that means you don't know if you're walking into a floor or not. And because it turns itself on automatically, you're basically forced to equip it and unequip it, not being able to really take advantage of the fact that you had 2 item slots. So it's basically the Water Temple of Ocarina of Time all over again, where you have to constantly open the menu and re-equip the iron boots over and over again. If you take out the torches' fires with a sword or throwing bombs, you will make these obstructions move, so you're basically forced to walk along invisible floors while the torches are up. I fell off the edge so many times in this goddamn room. I literally resorted to placing bombs in front of me while crawling forwards inch by inch so I'd know what was solid ground. How is that good level design? I was stuck on the middle section for so long, I wondered if I could even beat this playthrough. I mean, at least there are torches around, so you can kind of guess where the path is when you think about in relation to those, but it's still not really good enough. When I got the chest with the key, it took a while to progress because I was trapped, having thrown a bomb over to a torch and resulted in a wall obstructing my way back. Eventually I found out that falling off the edge spawns me on the right side of the obstruction, further away than I expected. Which is good for avoiding an unwinnable situation, but it's also unintuitive, as the only thing that made this puzzle remotely tolerable was that Link always respawned close to where you fell, rather than respawning at the entrance to the room and having to find his way all the way back. In A Link to the Past, you could use the Ether Medallion to make the invisible floors visible anytime you wanted, at least in the GBA version anyways, but that's such a good design choice that I keep misremembering it as always being that way. So having them only visible when the torches you're forced to extinguish are lit is ROM hack levels of terrible level design. The mini-boss after this nonsense was pathetically easy in comparison. A fireball and chain soldier that's stuck behind some glowing walls, so I just threw bombs at him and won. If this dungeon's supposed to be a boss rush, why the hell am I fighting just one boss and then some pathetic mini-bosses? One of which I could have sworn I already fought just progressing through the dungeon normally. They're trying to reference Wind Waker with the big door that has images that get filled in when you beat bosses, but because they're not usually bosses, it fails miserably at the finality effect it's going for. Refighting bosses I can understand. Mini-bosses? Now you're just padding. I left the dungeon to heal again and postponed the dungeon yet another day. The hookshot room is distracted because rather than just focusing on the hookshot, it's also got the Wall Master, which is a constant annoyance, and is the real challenge of this room. At first the challenge was pathetically easy because there's always these conveniently placed platforms so you can get it to land on. Then I had to backtrack over lava on a tiny platform with an eyeball thing by hookshotting way too many walls to pull the raft along. On a tiny platform that if the Wall Master lands on it, you're screwed. And there aren't that many platforms to protect you from the Wall Master here. I was grabbed twice by that thing. The saving grace is that you're only sent to the beginning of the room you're in, so it's heavily nerfed in this game. How are you supposed to know that though? It was very frustrating because every time I got grabbed when trying to get the eye to the eye switch, I had to backtrack all the way to where I first found the eye instead of the game remembering where the eye was last. It took a while for me to find the second eye. What a weird sentence. It was in the southwest corner of the room under a platform and Wallmaster breaks, and it took a bit for me to realize that I had to fuse with the wall to get over to it since the room was all about the hookshot and not wall fusing. It also took a bit for me to realize I could hookshot the eye, and that's how I'm supposed to get it to the locked door. So, let me get this straight. I can't hookshot chests, but I can hookshot an eye. And it doesn't look like the hookshot is latching inside of the eye thing. So, how? A saving grace of this room once again is that when you get to the part of the land with the locked door staircase, you activate a big platform that serves as a convenient bridge to immediately get you over. And what annoyed me was that the platform insists on moving the instant that the switch is pressed, but Link is forced to stand still while the ta-da chime plays. So what happens is that the platform moves on without you because that's totally not tone-deaf level design. And now you're forced to wait a couple seconds for it to come back, and then wait even more for it to decide to start moving again, rather than it always moving non-stop. The boss of this place is an actual boss, the Watergate Palace one. But I had a golden sword and got defeated faster than before, so it wasn't as tedious. It's still lightning fast though. I left the palace to get a blue potion and returned to the castle the next day. I went into the open big door in the castle and, oh, they made use of the Hyrule portal in the castle to make it a fairy fountain. The reason I went into the Hyrule portal at first is because it screamed out to me as a bright color, while it was harder to see the door to the right to progress because of the camera angle.